Hello everyone, let's make a scrolling background. This is the final result, and the goal is to create the illusion of the ship moving. The ship is not actually moving, the background moves. Okay, first go to the backgrounds folder. Let's choose this background sprite. Under the transform component you can see the position, rotation and scale of the object. We need a 0,0 position. You can just set it manually by writing 0 to x and y values, or click on 3 dots and click Reset. Notice that we don't see spaceship anymore. It's rendered behind the background. So select the ship. The sprite renderer component is responsible for a visual representation of the object. Expand additional settings. Here you can see the sorting layer and order in the layer. Important, don't mix sorting layers with these layers here. Sorting layers are for visual stuff and layers up here are for physics and collision stuff, which we talk about later in the course. Anyways, you can create new sorting layers, but in this case let's use the default one. We only need to increase the sorting order. The sorting order of the background and the player is 0, but if we increase the sorting order number of the player will be in front. I will set it to 10. Let's see how it looks in the simulator. The camera is a bit too close, so select the main camera and increase the size. This looks good for now. Okay, let's rename the background. Now with Ctrl D, duplicate it. Press W to use the Move tool and move the duplicate up a bit. Now press V and click on the bottom left vertex. Drag it down to the other background and it will snap perfectly into position. In the hierarchy, drag the duplicate background onto the original one. Now the original will be a parent and the duplicate will be a child object. Let's rename it. The next step is to create a new script. Let's stay organized, so let's create a new folder for scripts. Now let's create a new C# script called Parallax. Select the parent background and add the script. You can also use add component to add the script. Now open it. First, let's create some variables. I will use the attribute serialize field for the private float variable parallax speed. Now, even when the variable is private, I can access it in the inspector. We also need private float sprite height and private vector 3 start position. By default, you should see two functions, start and update. Start is called only once when the object is enabled. That usually means when the level starts. The update function is called repeatedly every frame. We use start to initialize variables. So when the level starts, let's store the position of the background in our vector 3 starting position. So start position gets the value of transform.position. Note that transform is a component on the object. Also, let's use sprite renderer to get sprite height. We use getComponent to get access to the sprite renderer component and get the Y size of the sprite. If you want to remind yourself how to use the getComponent function, I will put a link to my YouTube tutorial where I go into more detail about getComponent. That's all for the start function. In the update, the goal is to move the background down a little bit every frame, so we use transform.translate function. We need to move down, so let's use vector3.down for the direction, then multiply it with the parallax speed. In the end, multiply all with time.delta time, so the movement looks smooth and even. Of course, now the background will go down infinitely. After a certain distance, we need to reset the position. So if the current position on Y is less than starting position minus sprite height, that means the background moved more than one full height of the sprite. Then we need to move it up instantly to the starting position. In that way, we get a loop effect. Okay, that's all we need to code. In the inspector, choose parallax speed and click play. You can see how it works in the scene view. And this is how it looks in the simulator. Nice. Now let's take this background. Let's press V and drag this corner. It should snap and align perfectly. Since this part is a bit transparent, it can be in front of the player, so set the order in the layer to 11. You can see that looks nice. Rename the second background. Duplicate it. Rename it. And move it up just like in the previous example. Also make it a child object. On the parent object, add the parallax script and choose speed. Let's see how it looks now. Nice. To better organize the hierarchy, we can create an empty game object and reset the position. Select two background bases and drag them under the backgrounds object. Great. Now here is your mini challenge. We have one more background and stars to add. Just repeat the process and don't forget to change the order in the layer. Here is the end result. Under backgrounds we have 4 objects. The sorting order for the third background is 1 and for the stars is 2. That's all for this lecture. See you in the next one.